I was just wondering, Johnny, like obviously we see you doing your stuff for ITV and doing the Six Nations and bits and pieces. How much rugby do you sort of watch?
I watch a fair bit, but to be honest, my insight and my passion is about the less visible areas of the game, if
Yeah.
you like, the experiential stuff behind the mental, the emotional, the energetic swings of the game, uh, and about the kind of challenges of that level of rugby, of what it takes to sort of play it, and to be out there on that field with everything flying about, as well as all the pressure, the expectation, the scrutiny, the build up, all of that. And a lot of that comes from my personal work with the kickers and the number 10s with England, and with other players as well. And that's where a lot of my work gets done, in really trying to update myself, understand, speak to the players, get a real sense of what it's like to be a rugby player right now, what it's like to be in amongst these these environments, team environments, what it's like to play against these types of player. So yeah, there is the visible side, watching it and taking that in, and that's exciting, the way the game's changing. It's also a bit challenging at times, different to how when I was there. But a huge amount of it comes from exploring the the mental and emotional challenge, as well as the different personalities that you face on the field. That's perhaps the most exciting part for me, is getting to know players, recognizing how different personalities express themselves on a rugby pitch, how it's not one size fits all, and it's not one story fits all either. Everyone's there for different sort of perspectives and motivations. So yeah, all of that mixed in gives me a sense of real kind of engagement when I'm watching
Yeah.
a game.
I was going to ask you, because I know them relatively well, but not as much from being on the training pitch. But the amount of work you do with Finn Smith at the minute, Marcus Smith, and George Ford. How different are they in terms of approaching things, to goal kicking, to training, etc.? Or are they all fairly similar where they're at the minute?
Just they're all such brilliant, personalities, different personalities, of course. Um, they have different, and just talk about any kickers now, different physiques, different shapes, different ways of moving, their own style, their own unique kind of, I guess, structures. So there's all of that. Um, there's obviously the clear shared goal that they want to put the ball through the post. Um, but there is this kind of need to marry that personality with a mechanically efficient physical technique. But the key with, and so they all have this little unique part to what they do, which is so beautiful. That needs to be that full expression, but there needs to be this efficiency, and that efficiency um, is about your body and all the energy physically going in line with where you want the ball to go, all your energy mentally being in line with what you want to happen. So you see what you want to happen, and you were able to hold that, and then emotionally being able to feel good about yourself and want to fully feel that experience, all of that stuff. But it means that during a session with each player, there are different things to focus on. Sometimes it's a little bit physical with one player and mental, and it will have to be different physical, different mental things. Other times it's really about just um, unlocking perhaps a bit of a kind of bit of in a conflict about something, and then suddenly the whole thing just makes sense. But normally it's every week it's a little bit about just making sure physical's in line, and then the player coming to a point of being able to feel so good about themselves and their talent that they can't help but just see the ball going through the post before they've even done it. They can't help but feel such a sweet contact before they've even hit it. And at that point, the whole thing's been created before they kick the ball. You can almost see it as they start the run up. You're like, it's done. And that's the space you want to get to. But then you know what it's like. You turn up before the game and you get the stadium gets into you, the people around, and suddenly you in that warm up before the game, you've got to reset yourself. You can't just do it on Monday, close the box and go, right, that'll be fine for the weekend. Every day there's some work to do, because even a tricky night's sleep can throw you off, or a little conversation with someone, it can set the triggers going. So that's what I love about it, is that in order to master that kind of goal kicking, you almost have to master yourself, and that's far bigger.
Be really interested to get your perspective on perhaps where England are at in the current day.
Yeah, I can only give you my perspective of my time, and that is that, and my personality was, I was super intense. Yeah, I don't know the whole England team at all, but I know a few of the guys, and I know that they care a lot. And I think sometimes that means you can't help but get caught up in the stuff around it. And there's so much scrutiny there. There's so much being thrown around in terms of stories and what this means, and it's difficult not to get caught up in that. And I think you end up a little bit, for a while, caught up in a survival mode, and so it can feel a bit like a bit of survival. It can almost be like just winning is survival, and that's really such a challenge. It's a major part of the playing, perhaps in England, or I'm sure in other countries around. I really only know about playing internationally in England, but there is that. But I think from my perspective, aside from that, there is excitement about the way they're playing. You can see that physically they're starting to make an impact. Yeah, it's funny how that works. Everyone tries just as hard, but 2 years ago in that French fixture, the French team sort of said they felt like they were playing against, almost a men versus boys type of affair in terms of the physical side. But you could see that just wasn't the case in this fixture now. And I think that kind of shift that's taken place in England is really a confidence, a connection thing between each other, between players and game plan, between players and management staff. It's all coming together with that time and that trust. And the same effort is now bringing about this sense of possibility and danger and threat about the way they're going. And to keep that going would be huge. But when there's been so much story over this last autumn and even the Ireland game about how England struggle in that latter quarter of the game to bring it home, or to stay in there, or whatever it is, that can start to become such a defining narrative when it's not even yours. And I think to go out there and prove that, stay in the game, it takes huge courage, to stand up and take responsibility and say, right, let's stay, especially when that game kind of went the way it did. But that's why these are psychological barriers that can be broken, and hopefully now they can that elastic band is snapped. There's no going back, and they can walk forward knowing that they can do whatever they want against the best out there.
Was there any times, Johnny, when you were playing, in terms, I'm sure there was, but where there's just games or periods of time where you just couldn't get over the line? You felt like you were playing really well and you were right in games, but you just couldn't get over the line. Was there anything in particular that stands out for you as a period of time?
Yeah, do you know what, the psychological barrier that broke for me in mine was probably the Southern Hemisphere leading up to about 2000. I was only in that space from about 98 onwards, but I had a rough time of it. Went on the tour of hell in 98 and faced got that shoved down my throat a little bit, that kind of, this is where you are. And then went into 99 with the pre-World Cup stuff. Had Australia in the summer. We had a good go at it, but it was a centenary game, big affair, and we had a good go at it. But again, just felt like we were there to make a good contest of it, and that was about as far as we could get. Then we had the World Cup in England, and we met New Zealand in that, and South Africa in the quarterfinal. And again, just this sense of, you're right there, but there's something not. There's that next gear, or that next bit of ruthlessness that was not there. And then we met Australia in the autumn in 2000. And it was one of those games, just like you said, it was almost like, how can we be in this position? We feel like we're such a good team. And then Ian Balshaw chipped the ball over and Dan Luger downed it. And it was one of those waiting for the video ref, and the whistle had already gone. It was that moment. And he did such a good job of putting it down from up high with one hand. But that was the moment. Suddenly you just went, why not? Where the other question was like, why should we beat these guys? You're always looking at them, how great they are, the history they've got, the players they've got, the stuff on the video they do. It's so slick. It's so this, it's so that, it's so this. But then comes this, but why not us? then you start to look at yourself and it all changes. You stop looking at everyone else. You start looking at your team. You start looking at the talent that you've got, and you start realizing that actually the unique power, precision, gifts that you've got in your 15 and your 23 and in your coaching staff and in your excitement and ambition, it's damn good. And when you back that even more, you get this momentum rolling. And we had that momentum for a good 4 or 5 years, maybe.
That sounds a little bit similar to what we had against Australia in my time in Wales, that we played. We kept losing to Australia by 1 point, one score, whatever, late on, last minute tries, etc. And it really became a mental barrier. And then we played them, I think, when did we play them? 2018, I think it was. And honestly, it was one of the worst games of rugby you'll ever see. And we won 9-6. I mean, when do you ever see a game being won 9-6 anymore? But it was just like after that moment, and I'm sure it was the same for you, that you just felt, okay, well, it almost proves to you that what you are doing can get you over the line. So that then we went on to play South Africa the next week and beat them. And then we went on to win the Grand Slam. So all of a sudden it just gives you that real confidence. And I'm sure that's what you felt. And I'd imagine that's what this England group will be feeling.
I think so. I mean, the difficult thing about this Six Nations this year and probably for a few years now, but certainly going ahead, is that it's so competitive. It's crazy competitive, and you can put in a great performance like many teams have done and still come up short against any number of teams in this year. They also, this kind of adage of taking your foot off the gas, even just the slightest percent is gonna destroy you. So there's always that on the other side. But I think what it does for me, and what it did for me, and what it might do for this team, who knows, is it just brings such a simplicity to everything. It simplifies everything. Suddenly you go from trying to work out how to win, looking at opposition, looking at everything, blah, blah, blah. And suddenly with that understanding of why not, and as you say, kind of the proof, it's almost just brings this ease of understanding it isn't that difficult. And then you trust your system, your defensive system. You start to go, oh, yeah. And then what that boils down to, even with the kicking thing we were talking about earlier, is you realize that when it becomes so simple, it's just you just do your job. And then you stop all this trying to do everyone else's job, trying to do the ball's job. How do I make the ball go over the post? Like, just kick it. Do your bit. And that totally revolutionized rugby for me, because I also know in the other part, when you make it so difficult, gosh, it's painful to watch yourself playing, making it difficult, trying to intellectualize the game like it's all these forces coming together, instead of actually just go out there, trust and feel. But you almost need permission to go there.
That permission almost is from the result, though, isn't it? In terms of once you've got that, you're not questioning, are the days too long? Are our tactics right? Is the kicking strategy right? Is the food? You know what it's like when you can't quite get over the line. Like you said, you look for any reason that you didn't get over the line, and then it's like you get over the line and everything's just simple. You leave all those questions behind. All of a sudden the food is brilliant, the days are great, the schedule's great, the tactics are great, and it just changes. It is so based on results, isn't it? But
then you got to that one time you got to get over the line without the result. That's the courageous part, to sort of, like you said, to say, look, I know I've got all these things going on in my mind, but you kind of go, let's just go. But you're right, England team, when in my time when we went on our run and leading up to the World Cup, we got to a point where we were the training week to another team would have looked like desperately unprofessional, because you'd have gone, you barely train. But you can't do that when you're coming up through the ranks, and you can't necessarily just go, look, let's not do much at all. But there is a point where the energy looks after itself, and you have to preserve the energy rather than go out there and expend it and complicate it. But it's a tricky path to navigate.
Give us a little bit, first of all, on how you thought Finn Smith went on the weekend, and how stacked England are in the second part in that 10 position.
Yeah, they've been that way for quite a long time, haven't they? With Owen and George swapping over often and playing in that position together, and then Marcus coming through, and I'm sure so many more guys in there, and now Finn joining. So yeah, you're right. They've had that privilege, that luxury of being able to look and bring these guys through However, I think, on the weekend, what a challenge that was for Finn Smith to come in on that game. And he even said it. I quite enjoyed what he said. He said he was felt a bit like a rabbit in the headlights for the first half. He sort of said that after the game. As a number 10, geez, it helps to get in the game early. Do something. Get hit, make a tackle, get your hands on the ball, see something coming together, just get in. But when you can't get in as a number 10, when you're the decision maker, but you haven't got your hands dirty, you haven't got the feel for it yet, it's so difficult to find that kind of doorway to that entry point to get in aligned with the energy of the game. And I think, look, for him, it's quite tricky. The French were sort of letting loose off all these turnovers. They were running everywhere. It looked like he was sort of maybe just doing his best to chase down late last minute tackles, stay in the game, almost chasing shadows. And I think that adds to the power of what he did in the second half, which was find himself, find his composure, find his calm. He had some really nice little touches in the first half, a couple that just gave him that sense of, this isn't too hard, that whole story about, international rugby. It's like, but you get out there, it's the same for everyone else. And I think he just settled into it really nicely. And in the second half, you just saw that power of that transition, for me, is probably the most impressive part. Yeah, the little cross kick going back the other way, the vision to see that, to work with his teammate over there. Freeman, to that understanding, brilliant. Other parts of the game, just his ability to hold defenders, turn the corner, once he's taken the ball out the back, and read that. Apologies. Read that space. Read that space. All of that, you can just see there's a real sense of game understanding, game intelligence, and genius in there, as well as being able to come up with the execution when it matters. You saw that again with a few of the little skills, but also at the end of the game, being handed the kicking tee. Marcus sort of said, "Go ahead, do your thing," and bang, ruthless. So that's a great. I think more than anything, that's the marker. We spoke about England last quarter, and in the last quarter of that game, he made that same transformation, if you like, and I think that's huge as a marker for a young guy in the game in that position.
Do you know what the biggest? I spoke to him afterwards. I said that the biggest compliment I could give him was that he looked good. Nothing more that you and sometimes that's just what you want to be as a number 10, isn't it? You want to be good, and you want everyone else to sort of to make the line breaks, to score the tries, put people into space. And I just thought that he was it could have been so easy for him to have gone to force things and try and be 9 out of 10, but he probably delivered a 7 out of 10 performance, which was absolutely perfect for what England needed. And like you said, I was never that great at that when I was playing. I don't know what you were like, but if you can't get in the game early doors, I was never great at sort of then when I was in the game, I wanted to do something quite good, or I wanted to make a real big impact, and then you find you're chasing it, and all of a sudden the game gets away from you a little bit. So that's what impressed me probably most about Finn on the weekend.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think early on in my career, I would have just been too exuberant and too kind of keen to just fly around the place, to have had the kind of composure and calm and the vision and what have you. And then at other times later on in my career, I'd have been too keen, like you said, to try and make something happen. But he found that balance between the two, of having the patience, the poise, and the trust to just in his team to wait. And I think that's quite powerful. It says a lot about the team as well, and his relationship, to be able to trust those guys to come up with the goods and not try and rush it and not step out of the structure or the game plan. So undoubtedly for him, it's a great space, but it's about finding that simplicity again this weekend, and that same trust. And as we know, not getting caught up in the fact that there'll be some stuff written in the papers and there'll be some external voices sort of talking about this and this. But if that clouds the clarity and gets in the way of that direct sort of passion and simplicity, then you got to let it go and just get back out there and give it another big shot on the weekend.
Give us your favorite ever personal memory from the Six Nations.
That's a good question. I've not thought about Six Nations itself. What would I say?
The Grand Slam game in 2003?
It was a good one. It was a good game. That one, I think maybe one of my favourites was coming back after 3 years out. We played Scotland at Twickenham. And I think it'd been a long wait just to play again. I'd been injured right up to the doorstep of that game anyway, and went out there, and it was perhaps a little bit of a, I don't know if it was a bit of a false result at the time, because we later found out in that season that we weren't quite where we needed to be, and we went on to actually do well at the World Cup, but that 2007 season. But just coming back, I'd been away from that buzz, that atmosphere for so long, and I was so fraught with tension, and we came back to Twickenham, full stadium, played Scotland, and just, it was one of those games where we had a good time. Everything seemed to go more or less our way, and it just felt like coming back. It wasn't necessarily the easiest path after that, but I think that reminded me of what Six Nations was for me, what it was all about. But also, I have to admit, those Grand Slam games that we lost three in a row, 4 in a row, they were painful as hell, but so good to see the passion, because each one of them was away. So we had, or even though Wales was at Wembley, but geez, what an event that was. Just what an event. And then Scotland at Murrayfield. So I got to experience not just the joy of winning as England, but the joy of what it meant to win as other countries, because, those guys put on a show.
I was going to say, that Scotland game at the Allianz Stadium, Johnny, that was the one where you scored in the corner, wasn't it?
Yes.
There was no chance you weren't in row Z in that for that try. Absolutely not a chance.
No.
But we thought, it's Jonny Wilkinson on his comeback match. Wow. We have to award it.
I have no idea how to play this answer.
You're all right. We'll move on to the next one. We'll move on to the next one. Give us, just before we finish, we'll go to the last one, and it's not an easy question to finish up because there's lots of pros and cons, but at the minute, maybe off the back of the first couple of rounds of the Six Nations, who do you think is in a really strong position to start at number 10 for the Lions against Australia this summer?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question. Wow. It's exciting as well, having that tour just around the corner. I think it's interesting. I don't know Andy Farrell's preferences, in terms of, I know Owen really quite well, and sort of had a connection, I guess, with Johnny Sexton, and seeing how he's played his Ireland team in the past, what kind of 10 he's had, and how that's functioned with the game plan he likes. We've seen what he's done with Ireland. We haven't been able to see what he's done with, at this point, another team. What would he do with a team if he had different players? We know that Ireland team seems to be enormously strong at running these great lines, great movement in the backs, but really ruthless, direct team. So I would hazard a guess that that's the kind of look we'll go for the Lions, in which case I think he'll want a 10 that, or want to make up in his back line that gives him that kind of real direct go forward. So with that in mind, what does that mean about the likes of Marcus Smith, Finn Russell? Do they fit as well? Because those guys can light up anything. And could you bring one of those guys in and surround them with players to give them that balance? That would be amazing. Or will he go for that sort of more direct, sort of straighter route that allows for, the openings to come further away in the team, maybe on the outsides, rather than to have the 10 pulling those strings? I guess we're going to find out from him. But at the moment, maybe you'd think it's more in the Ireland category.
With Prendergast.
Yeah, maybe, or I don't know. But that team certainly looks like it's still dominating the Northern Hemisphere sort of rugby, along with France. So you'd sort of look to that. But it'd be interesting. There's a long way to go now. And like I said, I spend a lot of time with the likes of Marcus Smith, and he's also someone we speak about, Finn and these guys. But if you're playing rugby right now, you want someone on the pitch. There's a guy that will certainly bring you some nice stuff.
Rugby Pod.